Hey everyone, welcome to Alpha to Sky. Now that we have gone through the ICAO and its publications, it's time for us to solve a few questions on these concepts to deepen our understanding. If you haven't watched the previous video, I would recommend you to do watch that video and come back to this one when you are ready to solve these questions. So let's get started. Starting with the first one, the most difficult one. So what does ICAO stand for? Is it the International Civil Airline Organization or International Civil Aviation Organization, International Council of Aviation Operations, or is it International Convention of Air Operators? So the correct answer is International Civil Aviation Organization. Now these options are quite similar, so don't get confused. Even though you know the right answer, you might choose the wrong one because they are almost similar, right? So please pay attention and choose the right one. The correct answer is International Civil Aviation Organization. Second question, ICAO was established by which international agreement? Is it the Warsaw Convention? Is it Geneva Convention, Chicago Convention, or the Montreal Convention? So in the beginning itself, when we started on the ICAO chapter, we studied that ICAO was established as part of the Chicago Convention. So Chicago Convention was established in 1944. It was signed in 1944, and then the ICAO was established in 1947. So it was based on the Chicago Convention. When was ICAO officially formed? Right. I just said the answer in the previous question. So Chicago Convention was signed in 1944 and the ICAO was formed in 1947. So it took almost 3 years to get all those participating countries to sign the Chicago Convention. Right. So it was established in 1947. How many ICAO annexes are there currently? Again, if you have not gone through the ICAO annexes, it's explained in the previous video. It's very important. You need to remember the annex number with their role or with the thing they are meant for, right? So please go through that video and you can come back to this one when you are ready. Do we have 17 annexes in the ICAO? Is it 18, 19, or 20? So in total, we have 19 annexes in the ICAO. Apart from the annexes, there are various other documents that support the annexes, but in total, we have 19 annexes. Which annex deals with personal licensing? So in the previous video, I had given a link to another video from a different YouTube channel. So I just happened to come across that video, which helps us to remember the ICAO annexes, all the 19 annexes. So that video gives an easy way to remember all these ICAO annexes, right? So you can follow that, or you can also follow your own mnemonics to remember all these things. So if you remember those things, you can answer this. So ICAO, which annex of the ICAO deals with personal licensing? Is it Annex 1, Annex 2, Annex 6, or is it Annex 8? So it is Annex 1. Which annex covers rules of the air? Again, as I mentioned, it is very important to remember all these annexes and their corresponding roles. So is it Annex 4, Annex 2, Annex 6, or is it Annex 12? So the correct answer is Annex 2, talks about the rules of the air. And also you can find all these documents on the ICAO official website. They do have books for all these annexes and their different parts. So you can go through that. So here, this is not a multiple choice question, but I just added all these annexes to do a kind of match the following. So on the left we have the annex numbers, and on the right we have their corresponding roles. Let's see how many you can get correct. Do comment, let me know how many of them you got correct, and if you don't get all of them correct, no worries, you can always go through the theory part and then come back and solve them, right? So annex 1, we just solved the question a couple of minutes back. So annex 1 is for personnel licensing. So this document, this annex, talks about the licensing of personnel, the crew and the pilots. Annex 2 talks about the rules of the air. We already saw that. Annex 4 talks about the aeronautical charts, the various charts used during air navigation. Annex 3 talks about the meteorological services for international air navigation. And then Annex 5 talks about the units of measurements. You need to remember all these annexes. There are a total of 19. You have to remember all the annexes with their numbers. Right? Moving on to the next one, we have Annex 6 to 10 and then their corresponding roles. So Annex 6 is for operation of aircraft. It talks about how the aircraft are operated. Annex 7 talks about the aircraft nationality and registration marks. We will be going through this in very detail in the next chapter. So yeah, Annex 7 talks about aircraft nationality and registration marks. Annex 9 talks about the facilitation, the customs and all those facilities that should be provided by a state to an airport, to an aircraft from another state, right? Annex 8 talks about the airworthiness, and Annex 10 talks about the aeronautical telecommunications, the standards that have to be followed during communication. So Annex 10 is the one which talks about that, right? Next we have Annexes 11 to 15, where Annex 11 stands for air traffic services. So this particular annex talks about the air traffic services. Annex 12 talks about the search and rescue of an aircraft. Annex 14 talks about the aerodromes, what are the facilities that should be provided in the aerodromes, and all those details are present in the Annex 14. And there are several volumes to some of these annexes. We don't need to get into that detail mostly, but yeah, we do need to remember all these annexes. Annex 13 talks about the aircraft accident and incident investigation. And then Annex 15 talks about aeronautical information services. Right. So Annexes 16 to 19. Annex 16 mentions the environmental protection, the steps that have to be taken by the airports, the airlines and different agencies to protect the environment. Annex 17 talks about safeguarding international aviation from acts of unlawful interference. Annex 19 talks about the safety management, and Annex 18 talks about safe transport of dangerous goods by air. All right, now that we have covered all the annexes, let's get into the next question, which is, what do the standards in the ICAO annexes mean for member countries? So if you remember, we had standards and recommended practices in the ICAO annexes. Standards are those which are supposed to be followed by the participating countries, and the recommended practices are the ones that are recommended for the participating states to follow, but it's not a mandatory. but still they have to inform ICAO if they are not following a recommended practice, so that ICAO has knowledge about that and keeps the other states informed. Okay, so they must follow them unless they inform ICAO about any differences. They are just suggestions for countries to use in their aviation rules. They are rules for international airlines, or they are optional and countries can ignore them completely. Fourth option is not right, because standards are not optional. The recommended practices are optional, right? So the first option, that is they must follow them unless they inform ICAO about any differences, right? So every participating country can inform the ICAO of any difference, like if they are not able to follow any of the standards, they can inform ICAO about the difference, because ICAO will keep the other participating countries informed. What is ICAO's relationship with the United Nations? So if you remember, we had studied that ICAO is an agency with a constituency status in the UNO, right? So the options are: it is an independent autonomous agency with a constituency status in the UNO. It is part of the UNO but not a specialized agency. It has no connection with the UNO at all. A temporary advisory body set up by the UNO for post-war air traffic. So correct answer is that it's an independent autonomous agency with a constituency status in the UNO. When we say independent autonomous agency, it means that so ICAO forms and follows its own rules, but it still has a constituency status in the UNO. So the first option is the correct one. The next question is, what is the ICAO document that contains SARPs? So this stands for standards and recommended practices. So if you remember, we had studied that ICAO has several publications. It has technical manuals, it has PANs, it has the SUPs, right, and the regional documents. So out of these documents, which is the document that contains the SARPs? Is it annexes? Is it the circulars, the technical manuals, or the state letters? So the correct answer is annexes, because they contain standards and recommended practices. Some of these annexes do not contain both, but if you talk about all the annexes together, annexes 1 to 19, they contain standards and recommended practices. What does PANS stand for? Again, this is a publication of the ICAO. So is it pilot or an aeronautical navigation standards, procedures for air navigation services, publication of aeronautical navigation systems, or is it procedures and notices for safety? The correct answer is procedures for air navigation services. Next, which document contains detailed technical material to support the SARPs? Which document contains the details that are required to actually implement those recommendations, standards and recommended practices? Is it the circulars, the technical manual, is it the annex, or the PANs? So the correct answer is technical manual. So technical manuals are those documents which contain detailed information about the implementation of these standards and recommended practices. Which body is the highest decision-making authority within ICAO? If you remember the ICAO organization structure, we had the assembly at the top, which was formed, which is the supreme body, right? And it was formed by the 193 members. And then we have the council, which had 36 members, and those 36 members were elected by the assembly, right? So that was the organization structure. So which one is the highest decision making authority within ICAO? The assembly was at the top in the organization structure that we saw. So the correct answer is assembly. After assembly comes the council, which has 36 members. Then we have the commissions and the secretariat and all those things. How many member states are elected to the ICAO council? I just mentioned in the previous question, there are 36 members or member states which are elected to the ICAO Council by the Assembly. How many regional offices does ICAO have? So to look into the aviation matters of different regions, we have the regional offices. The ICAO has the regional offices. So there are 7 regional offices of the ICAO to look into all these different regions. The correct answer is 7. Yay, we did it. We solved so many questions on the ICAO and its publications. Don't worry if you got a few questions wrong. You can always go through the theory and then come back to solve these questions again. Do let me know if you have any suggestions, feedbacks or corrections on these questions. And always remember, in the quiet rhythm of practice, dreams blossom into reality. So keep practicing. Thank you.